Ian has opted for iota in a fairly interesting position here. He's got the T in the double letter score line to prevent easy doubling of higher scoring tiles, but he's also left a front hook to create biota on the next turn. Doesn't have a B, but it's an interesting decision. It seems to be inviting aggression, potentially.
Yeah, on the one hand, I think it might be a statement to the notoriously defensive David Gibson that he's here to play and he's here to be volatile. On the other hand, when you are making your opening play in Scrabble, and actually any play, what you prefer not to do is to put a vowel next to like a double letter score or a double word score. You're trying to minimize the chance for the person to come back with a tile that will double in both ways or triple in both ways. So this is his way of avoiding that, as you notice by putting iota where he did. Even though he had 3 vowels, not a single one was next to the double letter score.
So he's gone with dude to get rid of one of his W's. Or D-wed, I'm not sure. Probably dude.
Do the do.
So Ian's got a fairly nice balanced rack here at this point.
Oh. Yeah, but it's one of those no-goes, right? It's one of those
Mocking racks.
there's no it should have a 7 on it, but it doesn't. And David did what he should do in an opening rack, which is to try to overlap as much as possible so that it forces Ian to either make 8s or now he only can play through a D. Or he has to have the B. I did notice when I was doing written commentary during the week for Collins that iota takes a D in front, actually. So he would have given David Gibson far more points with that play, and I doubt if he would have put iota in that same place.
I'm just going to double check that.
And ideating is now blocked, if you'll notice. Because of that placement, Ian can no longer play ideating.
So just as a note, Diota is still just Collins only, so that's the bigger book. B, the only front hook iota in this dictionary.
Didn't get a chance to talk to David yesterday. I'm sure if I did, it would be entirely punctuated by head nodding back and forth, saying I can't believe it, and they're playing so well, and look how they're catching up on me, and I'm going to be so nervous today. And he's just such a sweetheart. No matter how well he does, there's always impending disaster. So, but he's looking pretty good today, and Ian's looking pretty good too. I don't think Ian's ever won the national championships. Is that correct?
He has not.
He has not. So, if anyone has more reason to be nervous, it's certainly Ian. He's a medical doctor by profession, so has a lot of practice in being cool and calm, and hopefully that will serve him well today.
So he's opted for a scoring play here, underlapping the dude and iota play, keeping INT, nice synergic combination of letters to use in the future. And when we talk about synergy, we're talking about letters that mix well together for longer words. So INT, and now that he's drawn an S, those should all mix together very well. The unfortunate problem is he's drawn another N and an E. He almost has 16. It's not quite there, but...
She was just 17, but not 16. Yeah.
Not 16.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's an annoying rack because you're so close to a bingo, and you obviously want to undouble the N. We'll see if he gives him any vowels to play through, and he does not. Ooh, brutal.
So Watt keeps ES and the Z left over. The Z's a great tile to have in this game. Scores super well, usually without too much effort. And Zev, yes, it's looking like Ian will have to win all 3 of the games to win this championship, because my understanding is that David's spread is out of reach for pretty much everyone.
Well, This is the problem when you have a mucked up board like that. Oh, there you go. That's a good solution. Next is a possibility. Stop doing it. Stop putting it in. That would undouble his N. It would get rid of the X. It would save a very nice bingo prone rack. Another possibility is to play Nix at 7C. Not worth a lot of points, but would solve the problem of, as I said, undoubling the N. I think next I think is something that I would play, and I would certainly play it at 12, not at 13. I wouldn't give my opponent an opportunity to put a vowel on top of the X on row 12.
And Agent, I think that's Anderson with the 4 there instead of VA. Yes, this is in fact live. We are here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in the last 3 rounds of the North American Scrabble Championship. We're starting to get excited because one major division champion has already been decided. That's with the International Word Source. Anyone playing with that is in a separate division, and the winner has been decided there already. This one currently on screen uses a more local word source, and the man on the left, David Gibson, is very close to clinching the division title here. He just needs to win 1 of 3 games because his win-loss differential is much bigger than everyone else's.
Yeah, it's huge. Let me get that number for you. David has a spread of 2,047, and Ian has a spread of 1,042, so almost over 1,000 points ahead of him, which would be extremely difficult to make up. Mac Meller, who I think we're pretty much considering the only other person who might be able to, or no, or is it really between the two? I think it ultimately is between the two. If David and Ian keep playing, then Mac is locked out. But Mac Meller is number 3 at 19 and 9. Plus 1290, and that's quite a story. Mac Miller is I think he's 16.
He is 16, yeah.
He's 16. He's really quite unbelievable. You know, he burst onto the scene, and you could see he was going to be the next superstar, and he has lived true to that expectation. And he was not having a very good tournament. At one point he was 1 and 3, I think, and then he was 6 and 6. And so right now he's 19 and 9, which means he's gone 13 and 3 over the last couple of days, and he is now very solidly in 13th place with a plus 1290. So kudos to Mac. And at the age of 16 to be able to come back and do that. Maybe you have to be 16 to come back and do that. I don't know. There we go.
So we've got 10th here from Ian Weinstein to take the lead here.
And the other possibility that he had would have been to play insetted at J2, which would have opened the board a lot for an extra 3 points. So I'm sure he made the very conscious decision to play 10th for 60 instead of 63 for insetted, giving David a bit of a taste of his own style of play. He gives nothing away this way. And if David wants to open the board, he's going to have to play to the D himself, and then give Ian a chance to come back off of whatever he plays.
In different circumstances, he might have played Vend to that D and dude just to make life really difficult, but that's certainly not going to help him now. He wants the board to stay relatively open with only one real obvious bingo lane. And just to clarify that, a bingo lane is when there is a line on the board that allows you to place at least 7 letters down in a row, because when you use 7 at the same time, you get 50 bonus points. So right now, underneath the ED, you could hook on an H or an S and make a 7-letter word to the right. That's the one main bingo line. There's also the T in 10th to play 8-letter words through, and the D in dude. The I technically is an iota, but it's there's not very many words that are that long.
I once played Popliteai, I will say
Yes.
that. I'll give you some further to what we talked about yesterday if you were with us. We talked about how even a single tiny error can change the course of the game and put at jeopardy your chance to win. If Ian had decided to go for points, or he had decided to open the board and played insetted, right now David Gibson would have slapped down non-lives faster than you can say hello, and he would have bingoed right back in the game. He would have actually been in the lead. He would have given a juicy row, triple row for Ian to play above it. Nonetheless, by not playing insetted, by sacrificing the 3 points and keeping the board tight, he has prevented David from bingoing back with non-lives.
So David Gibson has oven lined up on his rack, looking to open the board up. I don't think he'll consider Sloven here. EDS.
Sloven?
Sloven. I think slovenly, but
Slovenly. I think that might take an S. One of those. Yeah, it does.
does,
It's one
okay.
of those
Then-
things that sound like an adjective but are actually also a noun.
so then he definitely does not want to play that.
No, I don't think he would. We're always talking about undoubling, and although non is very nice, sometimes it's okay to have two of the same letters if they're actually synergistic. So two F's are great together, two M's are great together, even two N's if you have that O, and then you can create non-words.
He is considering keeping non and an S, it looks like, looking at options with the VLE. The nice thing about David Gibson is at least some of his thought process, you can actually see him doing it with his rack
Yeah.
right in front of us, which is with players who use more of what we call the alphagramming style, we don't really see that. And just to explain a little bit more terminology, alphagramming is what Ian Weinstein is doing with his rack. He's got all of his letters in alphabetical order, and some of us have learned words that way. We trigger our memory
Oh, I have.
by lining words up in alphabetical order, and just by looking at that pattern, with enough time and practice, we can recognize if there are longer words in there. David Gibson doesn't seem to use that approach as much. I'm not going to say he doesn't, but you can see him playing with the rack in front of him, and thus his thought process.
Well, for me, one of the reasons that I do that is because not only do I use the left side of my brain, which is to recognize the words, but then I use the right side of the brain because the letters in alphabetical order now become an image for me. And so I'm using both the left and the right side of my brain to find the words. I'm so used to studying them in alphabetical order that they have meaning to me now. So it's just a different style. I can't imagine that Ian is not going to slap down cat in 3 seconds over the second T and tentiest if that stays open, which it is.
Interestingly, David Gibson does go for Vend even when he's down. I would have expected that if he had maintained his lead, potentially, but I'm a bit curious about this decision here.
One suggestion was to play no in front of yes to make oyes, even though he doesn't have another O to hook in front, but it's not too dangerous.
I mean, it's worth noting that David Gibson is not that far behind, but he is closing up the board somewhat with just a V to play through, which is not really a bingo line at all.
And envoi down to the I and iota would have been a very nice way to open up the board. But we'll see how that plays out. It's very early in the game, so the desperation need to open the board certainly doesn't exist. But I can't imagine that Ian won't play cat, and I'm not exactly. There we go. Yeah. Saves a beautiful rack and gets rid of the Q. And blocks another bingo line.
It takes out the main bingo line, where only words ending in I something because of QI and then maybe an S at the end or an N. That's the main area. Plus, of course, through the V for some more rare 8-letter words.
Oh, he picked up air sick. Wow, how pretty is that?
That's nice.
Nowhere to put it, but wow, great word.
And then I saw a suggestion for David Gibson's turn in the chat for Nevi to the I and iota. This does open the board up, but he's not totally desperate to open the board at this point. And Nevi also gives back a lot of points that you don't have to give back to your opponent. So I think maybe if it were later in the game and perhaps he were down by more, then it would be a consideration. But I'm not sure it's quite warranted at this point in time.
Oops. So you saw that he had 3 eyes on his rack, which is very unfortunate.
So Ersic gets to play parallel to the opening that David Gibson just created. This is the break that Ian needs, because he needs to win all 3 of his games.
He got Ersic down so quickly.
He did. But David Gibson will be playing something big of his own right back.
Yes, he will. Liddy's is good.
I'm sure he wishes that Ersic's worked, but it does not.
Is Lenny new-ish, as in last 2 years?
I am
Trying
not
to
sure, to
remember.
be honest.
I think it might be so that the only possibility of him not slapping it down is simply that he's not 1,000% sure.
I think he's going to find this one. I'm going to trust him
Oh,
on
matter
that.
of finding it, no problem. It's trusting it.
This is true. We do know that in somewhat similar circumstances, several years ago, David Gibson was playing another legend of the game, Nigel Richards, and he had the opportunity to play the word northing from an N on the board, and because he was playing Nigel and wasn't entirely sure, he passed on it. And that was particularly devastating because...
That wasn't even a new word. That
It
was
wasn't,
just,
no.
that was just, I'm playing Nigel and I have to be 1,000% right all the time.
And part of the pressure in that game was David didn't even have to win. He only had to lose by a small score. So it was really
He's not
unfortunate.
sure. Oh, okay.
So David Gibson's been here before. He has won this event before and came very
He's
close
not
recently.
sure, you see?
He's not sure enough of the word, opts for nil, and this is a break, a big break for Ian.
Well, things were already going in his direction anyway, but this was absolutely the one thing David had to do after he gave airsick to Ian was to bingo back. So it's not boding well.
And he has a mocking rack as a result of that last play.
Yeah. And that's what happens sometimes. You know, you do get, we do believe that there are tile gods out there, and when you make the right play, you get rewarded. And there's a lot of people out there who make the wrong play and get rewarded, so it's not a hard and fast rule. He's not going to be happy with himself after this game. So you think that this is, you know, we talk about the butterfly effect, you know, over the ocean. This could have an effect on him in terms of his confidence for the upcoming games. He knows he just needs to win one, and now he's about to find out that he made a mistake that, you know, with 1 point tiles, it's not a good thing for a very top player to know that you missed a bingo with 1 point tiles. So we'll see. We're going to see how this is going to affect his equanimity, actually.
Fortunately for David, Ian has drawn another E.
That's a Canadian bank, the BMO, right?
Yeah. And now David Gibson has created an opening by playing, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Oyez?
Oyez.
It's a
Yeah,
legal
it's
term.
Oyer and Oyez. Yeah, I pronounce it Oyez, so whether it's correct or not is so I can remember it, but not that I need to remember it anymore. Yeah, that was very, oh, there we go. And of course he picks up a tile. And he has 2 places to play.
He's got refines in at least 2 spots next turn, and we don't suspect he's going to pass on that one, so...
No.
Meanwhile, Ian needs to figure out what to do with this, I would say, fairly blatant telegraph. You know, there's not much he can do, as it turns out, but it'll be interesting to see how this affects his mindset. He has a B for biota, but it's fairly hard to utilize that scoring spot at this point.
No, he
with
can't.
his rack.
Obviously, he's going to want to get rid of a bunch of E's. He might even play G, J-E-E.
He is looking at Obe and biota to clean up a little bit of his rack. EME and a blank is certainly not a bad leave here. M's better than the B
that seemed to
keep.
make a much better play.
So keeping that M, we're going to agree with that here, and we'll see what he does next turn.
He doesn't have any... he might choose to play Ben off the O in Oyez. That's 26 points. That's a lot.
EY wouldn't work for him, but
Except EY is not a good play.
he could play Ebon, but that does seem to give back the line that he doesn't need to give
Thank you.
to David Gibson. So
Yeah,
I
he's gonna play
suspect it'll
Obe.
be Obe off of biota.
So the question becomes, does David play refines? He's not going to play it next to the O and Oyez now. He's either going to open up the triple and play it next to Obe, or I think much more likely he's going to play Sal, refines and Sal over on the right side of the board.
I'm going to assume that as well. Other players, when they're behind, might consider playing refines off of the O and Obe to blow the board wide open. This doesn't seem to be David Gibson's style in particular, so...
You know what he also had? He also had, and I like this, no, never mind. I forgot to put in the Oyez play, so we're going to let that go.
So, refines on the right side, the somewhat more conservative play here.
Oh, you know, better than my play was Eben instead of Ben. Eben next to the.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
That's what I was saying there, to next to the O there. But it
Perfect.
would give back the triple line, and maybe
Perfect.
not what he wants to do after that
Perfect.
blatant fish.
I will pay attention soon, I promise you.
But now Ian
Where's that coffee?
will likely want to use that F hotspot on refines to get an easy score, something like, let's see, Menno, potentially.
You Demon is his bingo.
You Demon, yes, that's definitely better. So You Demon, it goes down at least 2 spots.
Which is a real heartbreaker for David, who's trying to, have a shot. I'm only 1 bingo down. He will have to open up the triple if he plays it along row C. And I can't imagine that he won't, but we'll see. He might not.
An interesting suggestion, which I actually like a lot, is someone has suggested Dobe and You Demon to try and restrict some of the board in that area.
We like that too. What would have been a stunning play if we were playing Collins is he could have played You Demon to the left of Refines, because is good. And that would have fit just so beautifully.
Meanwhile, David Gibson has a load of dreck on his rack after that last play.
I can't even think of a language that might word be good in. Sometimes we see Icelandic in some of the words, or there's nothing there.
Nothing great, really. Not even well, there's hilly, and then if and he, but that would, of course, block the board up for himself, not what he wants to do necessarily, but then it is a lot of points.
Where's that?
Hilly, and then he, and if, and Lee, and in.
Oh, yeah. That's, I can see him doing that.
So it scores a fair bit, but it closes the board Houri, or Houri, or I don't know how to say it, Houri on the top.
I think that's what he's going to play.
That's likely what he would
do. That's very
do.
likely what he's going to play. 32 points, opens the board.
Yeah, opens the board up. FIL is actually not that bad. He just needs an E or the other blank, ideally, to
he
give
needs
him
to
a
pick
shot
a blank,
to get back in, but he's already not really in this game.
Well,
Ian essentially just needs to play on the top to take that out, no matter what the word is. So
blag or
is
grab.
Fairly straightforward.
I like something starting with a G, so it's much harder to hook underneath.
Glad would work well in that case. Just the I and the O would work under.
Yeah. Grab is my choice, personally. Especially with 3 R's on C and beyond. Definitely would play one of the R's off. So people are understanding what we're saying. If he plays blag, for example, it's very easy to hook underneath the B with a vowel. A, E, I, and O all fit under a B, as well as a Y. And there is a Y left. If you play glab, you can only hook underneath with an I or an O. And of course, ending a bingo with I or O is far less likely than with an E, for example. He has no choice but to stick an A over the H. And AH takes an A after it, an I after it, and an S after it. So very easy to hook that. And there's still an S unseen, and there's still a blank unseen. Still, I'm thinking Ian is feeling pretty good about this game. He has lots of time left. Nice, comfortable lead.
David Gibson has picked up the other blank. He just has a few clunky letters that'll prevent him from using it, at least on this turn.
The hated VU combination. He's going to have to play something like IV or something.
Yeah, IV leaving full words potentially.
Yeah.
Not sure where there was a go, but...
Well, right now it would go over Uri just beautifully.
Yeah. We don't suspect that'll be left there for very long.
No. He's going to have to pick something that goes underneath the AH. He could play iffy as well, although he would save the UV. But that would score a lot.
It'd be nice for David Gibson if there was an eye open for vilify, because that would clean things up nicely, but that's not going to go down.
One thing that's bad about that, aside from keeping the U, is that it plays off 5 tiles, whereas I'm sure he'd prefer to just play off 3 at most at this point. There you go. There's grab.
So
I think that was the right play.
keeps it as blocky as possible.
Now he does have IV next to the O in
Oh yeah.
oyes. Oh yes.
We were given a pronunciation by
He's gonna
someone
do-
who knows in the chat.
It's oye.
Yes.
Thank you.
So Iffy, great play, scores a lot. VUL, I'm not sure how many longer words you can draw to that, besides the words like Vulpine and Vulture and such. But
Venturi will fit underneath grab. Actually, there's an L.
There's an
Sorry
L,
about that.
yes.
I was thinking about the one time in the Canadian Championships where the one way to win was to keep UV on his rack and pick up Venturi, and that's exactly what happened. It was the craziest thing. Yeah, it's just not his game. In games where things are going well for David, he would have saved VUL and picked up a perfect rack to bingo in 3 different places, each for 80 points or more. Oh, look at what's going on with Ian. But he's picking up, even though he's very consonant heavy, he's picking up stuff that go together well. HM alone is a word. PHM, L go, they all go together very, very nicely. So he should be able to score. Now, he wishes he had that V so that he could right now block the board and stick under make a V word and pretty much close up the board for good. There is that open E, though, in U demon, eh? It's easy to score easy points, for example, going over the MO in U demon and playing a word like hap. But it leaves him with 4 consonants. But I think at this point scoring is probably plenty good enough. He can also just play hum in the same spot, not using up one of his vowels. So he could play HE and MM, and that would work very nicely too. And give himself one chance to perhaps bingo himself.
there is also Adobe, and he does have the A, so something like AMP or map or something above.
Adobe, right, absolutely. Good. Adobe is a new word for us for the last 2 years. And sometimes it's not always easy to see these front hooks. One of my favorite, this is not a new word, but one of my favorite back hooks is for the word flaming.
Flamingo.
Flamingo, yeah. Ventail takes an A in front of it to make aventail. I think the human brain is kind of wired to create closed circuits. So we see a word go down and we think, okay, that word is done, this circuit is closed. But in Scrabble, you constantly have to keep your mind open to the possibility that there are front hooks, back hooks, things that can be done to the word, and that the circuit is not closed at all. You have to keep your mind open to that all the time, while you're also juggling what's on your rack, what's potentially on your opponent's rack, what's in the bag. It is a very, very exhausting game to play.
So a few points of consideration for this move. And he and is a good play, but I like map better, and he's going for it just because it takes out the E line to play 8-letter words through, which is, as was pointed out in the chat, also part of why Iffy went down instead of Ivy, to leave that alive for a little bit longer. Now there's really only one major spot left, unless something like Disjoint went down in the bottom. So we would consider one major bingo lane open at this point, and the J would require some considerable good fortune to bingo through.
Since we're towards the end game, I've been doing some Ask Championship Player. We use our program Quackle, and when we ask it to give us some suggestions, it just gives us very quick ones, but then we ask it to think a lot deeper. And actually it had suggested SH underneath watt, so to make sh and watts, and actually leaving the bingo prone rack available to Ian himself. And his play of map did not even make it onto the list. Oh, it's interesting. I personally think it's a nice little play. It is, except for the AH hook, it is the most likely place for David to bingo through. And especially with a tile pool that is not vowel heavy, that is particularly juicy and delicious. And it's not in a place where he has to stick it in the 4th position or 5th position. It's a quite open lane.
The other thing that map does quite nicely is David Gibson likely would have played clove to some extent on one of the 2 spots last turn, just to declutter a little bit and try to create an opening, but clove is no longer an option here for him to play. You can see on his rack he's got the letters lined up that way, but he'll have to think a little bit more about what to do this time.
Well, he'd love to open a second lane away from the AH hook, but honestly the only thing that's available is J. And U-Demon took away the possibility of opening up the triple lane.
So really he has to start looking for potential 8-letter words that he could draw into through the J as a long shot to win this game, but that's already a fairly bleak landscape to try and get into that. So he's going to think as long as he needs to on this turn to figure out what the ideal way to declutter and go for the long shot win is here. I suspect the V and the U and at least one L would go in the most ideal of worlds, but COLS on it, or COL blank, pardon me, is a nice set of leftover letters, but does that play through the J is the other question.
Yeah.
If not, then maybe it's time to consider a less orthodox leave.
Well, you also have to consider at some point, like, we're always so bingo oriented, and honestly, does it really at this point really matter? He's down by 140 points. Yeah, he's got the blank, but he's got LUV. There's only one place to bingo, and he needs 2, and this is not going to happen. So I almost, if I were David, I might even consider, just let's get this game over with and stop using brain power, and I'm going to get tired if I keep thinking this hard. And just let's move on. And that's why when we have Can-Am, when we have the top 7 players in each country play each other, we have the option of conceding, because we know it's an exhausting tournament, and if there's no chance of winning, we just concede the game. And I think it's, it would be nice if we had that option, but we don't here because we have to have a tiebreaker based on spread.
So Gibson has not picked out the letters he needs to bingo at the top or at the bottom, so that's pretty much a GGTY at this point in time. He just wants to move to the next round.
That's it. And Ian has picked up the S and an A for sticking underneath. He has not picked up a tile that would block the row, but now that love is there, he just has to play underneath AH, and it's essentially over. If he just wants to score for points, he can play UH next to Oyez.
But I suspect he's going to want to do the right clinical thing and block there just to leave no chance for
the right clinical
a comeback.
Thing. I love that.
If anyone can do a comeback that we don't expect, it would be Gibson. So we want to make sure, ideally, in this situation.
I think even Jesus could not, or Lazarus could not stage a comeback today on this particular point.
Well, Lazarus did rise from the dead, so we can't rule that out.
Oh, look at that rack. Yeah, no, not happening. I've asked the championship player, for some reason it likes door. Let's see, but there's 10 tiles left, so it's only going to want to, there's only 3 tiles left in the bag. When I say 10, that means 7 on the other rack and then 3 in the bag. So you don't want to empty the bag just in case, although if you look at what's available, probably not too much is available for David to play. So it's opting to just play off 2 tiles, and it likes door under MU in U-Demon to make mud, and then parry, which is a very pretty little play. Another possibility is to play vuln. That's a new word that we got. It's a verb. Do you know what it means, to vuln?
I am trying to remember exactly what. I believe it has to do, I think of the word invulnerable because they are related. I just can't remember.
Oh, is that right?
I can't remember exactly what.
If anybody out there in Chatland knows, that would be great.
The root word, I believe, is similar in definition. I think it's something to do with... I'm
going to ask Ziziva.
I want to say a fortress or or protection or something, but it's...
Wasn't that
it's
haha? Didn't we do that yesterday?
Okay, we've gotten the answer in the chat. Vuln is to wound, and that makes sense. If you're invulnerable, you're not going to get wounded. So,
okay.
so they are related. I just couldn't remember exactly
Okay,
how.
now, chat, since you're so quick and great, can you tell me the etymology of it? Where does that word come from? Because that is some word.
I want to say it's Roman, but I'm not sure.
Roman. Oh, okay. Why not? There we go. Oh, herds. So Einan knows what's in the bag, except for the fact that the blank could be used to hook over that U. It's he's pretty much figured out that there's nothing that David could have. Oh, he also had Ashi. That would have been pretty off of Uri. At this point, it's just a matter of scoring. It's not a matter... he really absolutely did not need to block. If he wanted to block that lane, although he would have given David an A to play through, he could have played Al-Mud through that MU as well.
So in chat, we have it confirmed. Vuln's etymology comes from the late 16th century in irregular form of the Latin vulnare, so what the Romans would have spoken. So
Outstanding work.
I said Roman, but that's obviously not a language. I just associated with the Romans. So
I
thank
just
you.
assumed you meant in the Roman
yes. So
part of
thank
the
you
world.
to the lexicographers who are clearly awake.
To wound by biting at the... Okay, we won't say that. Oh, Michael Quell. Hi, Michael. Good to see ya. I should stick my head up now and then and take a look at what you guys are writing. Although from what I hear, I shouldn't have. I will stay pure as the driven snow. Okay, finally the juicy O hook has been taken by David. And we will just finish off this game quickly, let's hope. Thanks, Slugbugger, I appreciate that. You guys are protecting us, we like that. Thank you.
And David Gibson has the GTL life lined up there. Who would have thought? He likes to gym, tan, and laundry. Reference to a little bit of reality TV there.
You know, if you had kept me on moderation for the next 400 years, I never would have come up with that line. So thank you, Jesse.
I'm recovering from my gaffe earlier for not saying Latin correctly, trying to add some flavor here.
Well, I'll fess up. My son says yesterday I said something that the people in chat thought was really cool, and which I, of course, did not know that I had said intentionally when I mentioned that Winter was going to put his hand in his head, and apparently that's a big thing.
It is. Face palming is a big thing.
Cool without even knowing it, right?
Yes. Look at you, the hit mama.
Right.
Gibson's going to have to hold off on the GTL for now. Meanwhile, Ian's figuring out what to do here next. Really, it's just a matter of playing out, and it doesn't even have to maximize spread at this point. He, for the purpose of practice, should try and get the most points here in the end game, but really it's just a matter of winning all three games for Ian. So
David is 1,000 points ahead in the spread. So unless Ian has 3 games in a row where he's up by 400 points, you know, the spread is really not an issue. I'm not exactly sure what's taking so long. I mean, I appreciate his integrity, and yeah, Aura is absolutely fine. Just let's move on.
So, you heard it here first. David is apparently remarkably tan, and his clothes are nicely washed, on point. But yeah, a bit gaunt to fit the
That may be more
the
gym for him. He's
Yes.
David. He's 65 years old.
That's
He's
true.
looking pretty amazing. Not even for 65, for any age. And hardly any gray. Like, there are some people like that. It's very unfair.
Johnny, just to answer the question, Ian is not a common pronunciation for that name. It just happens to be the way that he prefers his name to be pronounced. So naturally we try to respect that, but forget, because Ian is, of course, the default pronunciation for that.
That's not Ion, it's Ian. Does he not have a place to go out?
He's just going with Gleet, possibly.
No, there's no room for that.
Yeah.
Oh,
That blank
there
is
is room.
an
Oh,
E.
there is room. Okay. Oh, there
So
we go.
he's just played Glee to go out. That brings Ian Weinstein to 22 wins as well.
Weinstein. Not Weinstein.
I think that's the way he likes it pronounced. I'm not sure. I mean, like, if the first name's off, why not the second one? So, I don't know. I mean, Weinstein is what I'd assume
I think
normally.
that's so
but
funny. That's beautiful.
I just assume that it's different. So,
I think that's his new name, Ian Weinstein. I love it.
So with that, they're both tied at a remarkable
Oh my
22
goodness.
wins. The thing to note here is that while their records are identical, David Gibson has a significantly larger big win-loss differential. So all he needs to do is win one more of the last 2 games here, because if they both are tied at 23 wins apiece, David Gibson's win-loss differential